Hello to you. Thank you so much for joining me here in my little corner of YouTube. Every week I am chatting to someone very interesting who's got something to offer or who works within the realms of women, mothers, creativity, wellness, health, that kind of vibe. This week I speak to the lovely Leanne. She is a hype coach for mums, and hyped I had just the most wonderful chat with her. We spoke a lot about self-worth and how that's often the basis for a lot of things, but it's a juicy chat, and my goodness, her energy is so infectious. I did a little Instagram afterwards, and I think I said I felt emotional, empowered and invigorated. That's how I felt after our little talk. And then of course I'm following on my usual pattern of doing a little challenge at the end, a little task. So if you want to join me in doing a little task, Leanne sets us a task to do. I won't spoil it, but it's to do with your inner critic and tackling that little devil. So do stick around, watch until the end, if you want to see how I got on with my challenge. Oh God, makes me nervous thinking about it, but that's the point. And do enjoy our chat, ladies and gentlemen. Here is Leanne.
Hello, I'm here. How are you?
Hey, how's it going?
It's so nice to meet you.
I know, you too. This is so fun. Honestly,
I know.
I've ever had. I love it. So thank you so much for joining me. I'm buzzing. I was so excited when I found your account actually on Instagram, good old Insta, because like everything you do and all your messages are just like so spot on to kind of.
Oh, thank you.
Well, your content is just so brilliant, and I found you and I was like, yes, this, yeah, what she said, yeah, that, like it's.
I feel the exact same about you. When I found your account and saw your face, I was like, yes, I totally connect with what this woman is saying. So the fact that we're getting together this morning for a chat, it's just worked out perfectly.
Oh, I'm so pleased. I love it. Hey, can you tell me a little bit more then about kind of what you do and how you got into it and why you do it? Because I feel like our missions are quite similar. We're kind of on a mission to help frazzled, overwhelmed mums, because it's just bloody hard, isn't it? It is hard.
Oh my God. It is the hardest job you're ever going to do, isn't it?
I know, and no one can prepare you for it. And like all the cliche things that people say before, you like, and then you go, oh yeah, now I get it. So I feel like our missions are aligned on that front, and like trying to help overwhelmed mums and busy mums, but we've probably got slightly different ways in which we're achieving that. So yeah, talk me through it. How did you come about on your mission?
So I was that mum that had lost herself, was overwhelmed, exhausted, was in a job that didn't light me up, and I suffered really badly with health anxiety.
Yeah.
And it just got to the point where I just couldn't take it anymore. So I started to see a therapist, and she made me realise that all of the issues that I had, whether it was the people pleasing, the anxiety, the feeling guilty about everything, it came down to me not having a solid sense of self-worth, which I kind of realised a little bit, but I hadn't ever appreciated how much that was affecting every part of my life. Because I'm such a outwardly confident person, I'm always bubbly, I'm always smiling. I was never the person that you would pick out of a crowd and say, she doesn't have any self-worth. But inside, that was me. So I felt imposter syndrome. The health anxiety was so bad. And when I realised that this was all because that my lack of solid self-worth, it just clicked into place. And then I went about this amazing self-love journey, this self-worth journey. And when I was able to really cultivate solid self-worth, that's when my life just became so much easier. I got ambition back again. I found it easy to connect with people. I started doing things that I wanted to do. And that is the mission that I'm on now for mums. I want them to have a solid sense of self-worth so that they can find their lives so much easier, exciting, and create a ripple effect for their families, for their children. Because when mum shows up as happy and the best version of herself, she gives permission for her kids to do the same. And that is just amazing, isn't it?
Oh, it's so good. I'm like sat here, to be frank, with a slight lump in my throat, because it's such an emotional subject, and like I can relate so directly to everything you're saying. I've had the same revelations and the same experience, albeit in a slightly kind of different format. And I think what's interesting is that like you said, that concept of self-worth and it being, and I feel the same with kind of anxiety as well. I've always been someone that's been outwardly very confident, very self-assured, and I would say I've never suffered with that. I'm lucky enough never to have suffered with anxiety and depression, but actually when you think about it, some of those things are way more subtle and ingrained and kind of insidious than you think. And it's like with the anxiety thing, I know you touched upon your kind of health anxiety. You did a really fantastic post on Instagram this morning about it as well, and I kind of related that to I've had issues around kind of intrusive thoughts and stuff like that, and I know that's really common for new mums, and you can kind of, you don't necessarily think of that as a kind of a form of anxiety or whatever, but it can show up in those subtle ways. And then
what kind of intrusive thoughts were you having?
Oh, horrible ones. But it was more about my daughter than myself. Like, what if she falls downstairs? What if I just dropped her down the stairs? Or what if we were out and we got run over in the road? Or what if someone broke into the house and, attacked it? Just all sorts, just really dark thoughts. And you kind of go, why is my brain coming up with that? Am I a dark person?
Your thoughts create your feelings, and because your brain doesn't know the difference between what's reality and what isn't, you are literally feeling how you would feel if that happened. It's really, really hard, isn't it?
Yeah, it's awful. And it kind of comes and goes in waves. When she was a tiny baby, it was a lot more to do with kind of I think the direct safety and harm kind of elements. What if she fell on a knife or whatever? And then as she's got older, she's 3 now, it's kind of merged more into kind of other things and worries about just bringing up a woman in the world. And it's like, I've sat and had proper sobbing sessions just at like, the world's an evil place. Just like it's so it's really tough, but I'm glad that there are people out there that are raising awareness and like trying to help women with that, because it's real. And like I said, I kind of thought all those things were just a little part of my life, part of every day. They weren't front and center, so I thought, it's okay, I'm fine, nothing's wrong here. And it's just every now and then these things will pop in, but actually, if that is happening, you kind of got to acknowledge it, haven't you, and go,
definitely. And I think that the society that we live in, it makes us anxiety prone, because I just posted a reel this morning about the news. Like, they were literally saying every half an hour, Christmas isn't going to happen, you're not going to be able to afford to heat your home, and also what we're doing, the planet isn't, we can't, basically, that we're all going to be flooded and die. And it's like, my God, how much more can we take? It's just too much, isn't it?
It is too much. What advice do you have for that, because I was about to say I did go through a period of kind of what's the word, like editing the kind of media that I was taking in. Mine was all about kind of women's safety and girls' safety and misogyny and that kind of stuff. I'd watch like a couple of grisly dramas, I think, and then I'd listen to a couple of podcasts about that kind of culture, and I went through probably about a year where I just had to switch off. I just had to kind of disengage from that kind of stuff. I didn't watch any kind of dramas with that kind of theme. If my friends were talking about stuff in the news, I just had to say, oh, I'm just gonna like exit this conversation. So that was kind of my coping strategy, I think, for a little while. Do you have any kind of further advice when it comes to scary stuff in the media and the news? And
I think what you've said that you've done is really powerful. Like you are allowed to edit out your life so that you almost put the shield around you. So if you don't want to listen to the news, if you don't want to hang out with people that drain you, I really think it's important to almost do like a review of your life and figure out what is draining your energy and give yourself permission to try and limit those things, whether that be people, what you're watching on TV, places you go, things you're doing. You are allowed to limit that, to protect yourself. And also in really bad moments of anxiety. So for instance, if you were triggered by listening to the news, something that I learned from one of my favorite coaches, Carl Lowenthal, was to actually ask yourself, is this a threat to my survival right now? And in actual fact, 99.9% of the time, it's not a threat to your survival. So then you can start to calm down. So I would definitely think about asking yourself that if you do feel really triggered, because we are living in a society where we are stuck in fight or flight all the time, and we feel like everything is a threat, but in actual fact, it's not.
Yeah, and that's such a good point, actually. And like you said, inside your head, it can't differentiate that, can it? So that's such a good point, because so much of our worry is hypothetical and future based.
It is.
So yeah, that's quite a simple little kind of reframe that you can do.
What I've realized is that for so many of us, particularly mums, particularly women, this constant worrying about not being good enough, about doing better, about what's going to go wrong, it is driven by our inner critic, and it certainly was for me. My inner critic told me that I didn't deserve the life that I had, so something was going to go wrong. My inner critic told me I didn't deserve the job that I had. My inner critic was so loud, and it made me anxious. It made me certain that something was going to go wrong. And when I started to cultivate that solid self-worth and I was able to turn the volume down on my inner critic, that's when the anxiety started to dissipate. And I would love mums that are struggling with anxiety to try that. Think about, are you feeling anxious because you don't deserve, or you feel that you don't deserve the life you've got? So when things go well, you're thinking something's going to go wrong. Really think about where that's coming from, and I bet that it's your inner critic telling you that you're not worthy.
Yeah. It's so powerful what you're saying, and I think that's a lot of work, isn't it? I think that's the thing, kind of going from that point A to point B. There's a lot of inner work to be done in that space.
Definitely.
It takes time, like it takes effort, yes, and it can be a bumpy road and stuff, but it also takes time. I'd like to get your thought on this. This is just a little kind of thought I've had in my mind recently. I was thinking of maybe doing like a little blog on it or something, but just talking about kind of what you touched on there about self-worth and not deserving what you have. I'd like to I'm interested what you think about this, because in two areas of my life, one was kind of my marriage, and now I'm going through it again in terms of my career and work situation. Let me just think about how I'm framing this.
I think sometimes there can be, I mean, mums particularly have this thing about guilt, don't they? Mums just feel guilty.
Oh, massively.
Like all like, I'm not worthy. I'm guilty of this. I feel good, trying to balance everything. So in relation to both, I'm just using these as examples to kind of tie this idea to, but in both examples of my marriage and my job, I had this feeling like of this deep knowing and like gut instinct. People call it gut instinct, don't they, or intuition, that like this isn't quite right, and this isn't quite for me, and I'm not thriving at my personal maximum capacity in the limitations of this experience. But what I think is very common for women, particularly for mums, but for women generally, is like lots of people would be happy with this though. I'm lucky to have this. It's good enough. It's at least stable. It's at least familiar. I should be grateful for what I have now, and not kind of frivolously throw that away. And I don't deserve to want more than this, because a lot of people would be happy with this. And it's like balancing this idea of being grateful for what you have, but still having the self-worth to know when actually it's not enough for you. And that's quite,
and you are allowed to want more. Like, I think as women, because of patriarchy, we are told just to stay small and don't rock the boat. Be grateful for what you've got. Why do you want to be any different? But we've, in our hearts, we know what we want and what is going to make us feel good. And as women, we're told to forget what makes us feel good and worry about everyone else. But I love that you are so in touch with how you feel, that you do notice that you want more. And I would say go for it, because if it's written on your heart, it's there for a reason.
Yeah. Do you have any advice? I don't know whether you do any of this kind of work within your coaching work, about tapping into that tiny little voice at the back of your head, or that little gut feeling, or that little, because it, like in my marriage, in both circumstances, it took me like a few years, a couple of years, a long time to kind of listen to that more and more and go, okay. And in the case of my marriage, it was actually the arrival of my daughter that kind of triggered this whole self-worth journey, because I kind of thought, would I want this for her? And the answer was no. And it was like, well, if it's not good enough for her, why is it good enough for me? But without her, I would have probably just trundled on and on and on and on. And it's the same thing. It's been a good kind of couple of years in my job, which is a good job, but there's this niggling thing, and it's like, I think I could do more than this,
Yes.
So do you have any advice for kind of how to tap into that intuition, and how to listen to that voice more, and how to kind of work out whether it's just an idea or whether there's more to it, or how you kind of bring in the kind of self-worth work into that as well?
So how I work with my clients is that the first thing we do in the very first week is we say hello and goodbye to their inner critic. Okay. So there's a lot of beliefs and programming that we have in our heads that tell us, don't do that, you're not good enough, maybe making you doubt your own true voice. Okay. So having the awareness of your inner critic and what it's saying to you means that you can begin to call it out and actually see it for what it is. Your inner critic doesn't know what's best for you. It doesn't tell the truth. It doesn't care if you're happy or fulfilled. Yet we spend all of our days living in accordance with it. Okay, so I kind of get my clients to break up with their inner critic. And only then, once you've done that, does your true self start to show up more. So that's what I would get you
that makes sense. It's about quietening that bit. So the truth.
So the other, it's almost like a tipping scale. So if your inner critic's up there, your self-worth's down there, and then slowly, by turning the volume down on your inner critic and cultivating self-worth, you can just get to know yourself so much more. So I would then ask you questions like, so if you knew you couldn't fail and your inner critic couldn't stop you, what would you love to do with your career?
Is that a direct question to me?
Yes, if you would like to answer it. If you weren't going to fail.
So I'm on a mission at the moment to take, so my main job is in marketing and I'm employed as a marketing manager at the moment, but I'd really like to go freelance and start working with people that have got businesses and stuff that I'm more interested in on a personal level, you know, anything in the kind of well-being area. But yes, it's interesting, isn't it, with the inner critic, and you know, where does that come from? Is it our upbringing? Is it society? Is it, you know, whatever? Because it's like, oh yes, but that's more risky and that's quite scary.
Yeah, I think it's there because back in the day when we were lizards, like I like to call it our lizard brain, like it kept us safe, it kept us small, it kept us, we had to be people pleasers back then because we were in a tribe. But we don't need it to rule our life anymore. We can keep ourselves safe. And what I've come to realize through coaching and growing my own business is that when I look at fear now, I get excited by it because I know that nerve and that fear, there's good things to be had on the other side.
Yeah.
So many times I've been nervous about being on podcasts or going on the radio. I felt really nervous. I've had sweaty palms and everything, and I could have easily felt the fear and not done it. But then I would never have felt great about doing it.
There's
and I would
quote, isn't there? What is it, like something like all the good stuff is on the other side of your comfort zone or something like that?
Yes.
I probably butchered that phrase, but it kind of reminds me of that.
Yeah, and I agree with that so much, and that's something that I get mums to realize, is that you can have a life, a really vibrant, abundant life outside of this comfort zone that you're in. And sometimes it's not even a comfort zone, it's an uncomfortable comfort zone.
Yeah. Oh God, I so wholeheartedly agree with you on that. Yeah.
And mums need something else just for them, whether that's a business, whether that's an exercise program, whether that's a friendship group. We need something that is just for us because that makes us feel alive. And then we show up as better parents.
Yes, that's the key, isn't it? That's the key. And that's the message I'm trying to get across with my you can't pour from an empty cup thing. You need to,
you can't at all.
You need to address all these things. You need to make sure you yourself are thriving in order to kind of, you know, lift everyone up around you as well. Leanne, I could talk to you forever. This is so fascinating, and I can see the value that your clients must get from your coaching. It's just so brilliant. Can you give us a little taster? So as you know, on these weekly chats, I like to have a little homework task.
Yes.
A little taster of what you do, and something that can help anyone who's watching and wants to do the task as well, other kind of busy mums. So have you got something in mind that you can set me as a little task?
Yes, I do. What I would love you to do, now that I've kind of introduced you to the concept of your inner critic, and it could be shown up in you as perfectionism, comparison, mum guilt, imposter syndrome, body image stuff.
All of that,
Well, so like most of us, we tick every box, but what I would love you to do is to start to get control over your inner critic. And I would love you to start doing that by doing one thing every day that your inner critic would hate.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Okay. I'm gonna push you to show your inner critic who is boss. And you're gonna start that by you doing what you want to do that your inner critic would hate.
I love that. That's giving me that kind of scared but excited feeling you would.
Yes.
How would you advise to go about this? Would you like make a list of like some of those things your inner critic might say and then come up with a little something to do to counter that?
I would maybe just, because funnily enough, something I get my clients to do is to do an inner critic diary. And my clients are always, it blows their mind when they do that diary to see how much their inner critic is barraging them every day with more things that they need to think about or do.
Yeah.
It's eye-opening. I've had tears, I've had people break down because they're like, oh my God, I'm actually horrible to myself. And I think that if you can catch it in the moment and choose to do something anyway, I think that would be even more powerful than writing it down in advance.
Yeah.
So maybe, for instance, you really might just want to have, for the next hour, have a coffee and just chill out on the sofa and watch Strictly. But your inner critic says, no, don't be lazy. You've got washing to do. You've got ironing to do. I would love you to, in the moment, actually say, no, I'm going to do what I want to do right now.
Yeah. Oh, Leanne, I'm so fired up to do this because I can already see just from this that, because I would generally think I'm pretty kind to myself. I don't hate myself. I'm a advocate for self-love. But just talking to you, I'm like, I can see that when I start to do this, and it must be the same for your clients, that just the act of noting it down, because it's so subtle, isn't it? And it's so
yes,
subtle.
it is.
I know that it's going to be there way more than I expect.
It has. Our inner critic has become the background noise that we all just live with and tolerate. Yeah. And I don't want it to be like that. I want us to be able to turn the volume down on that inner critic and see how amazing life can be on the other side of all this criticism.
Yeah. Oh God, honestly, I feel quite emotional. It's just such powerful work, and like you alluded to, I really think that what you're doing and this self-worth message is like the catalyst to everything else changing, isn't it?
I agree. It always comes back to self-worth, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It does.
It triggers everything you could imagine in your life. It's
life just becomes easier, and that's a message that I want to get across to mums who just want life to be easier. All you need to do is learn to turn the volume down on your inner critic and cultivate this self-worth, and then life's easier.
Yeah, and who wouldn't want that?
Exactly. Oh, it's been so lush to speak to you.
Oh,
please let me know what you're going to do.
I will.
With my inner critic, I'd love to know what you do or don't do.
Yeah, I'm going to keep you posted. And I'm just honestly so thrilled to have made a new friend via Instagram.
Yes,
it's wonderful for that kind of stuff. Leanne, tell people where they can find you if they want to know a little bit more, if they want to work with you. How do they get hold of you?
So I guess the easiest way is via my website, which is leannesia.com, or I'm on Instagram, which is _Leanne.Sia_. But I'm sure if they go through your page, we're following each other and you can catch me there. But I want to just cheerlead all mums. Like, I'm here for it. So if anyone wants to be involved, wants to feel great about themselves, and then come and join the gang.
Oh, I love it. Brilliant. I'm going to let you get on with your day, and I'm going to go and quash my inner critic over a
yes! Yes!
Love
it.
Take
care.
See you soon.
Bye.
That was so interesting, isn't it? I loved that chat about quietening the inner critic. Now, what I've done, actually what I did, it's now the next day, because I filmed this and then realised I'd filmed the whole thing in slow motion, which was hilarious. But I'm back again. And what I actually did was, as soon as I'd finished my chat with Leanne, my mind was buzzing on it, and I got myself Post-its and a pen, and I was just like just reeling them off. I was like writing down all these things as though it was like this inner critic like writing them right down for me, and I've stuck them all up here on my office window, which is quite hilarious. And I feel a bit more chill today, but I got quite emotional when I filmed this yesterday. I got quite emotional because I was like, I had no idea that I was quite often not very nice to myself. And the post-its seem to fall broadly into two categories. One is kind of physical appearance, mostly around my mum tum. I've got a very wrinkly mum tum, and although I kind of thought it doesn't bother me on the day-to-day, like, oh, there's some stuff coming up there. And the other one is my face. I had jaw surgery a few years ago because I have basically a wonky face, and I do get nervous sometimes doing, like, when I film, not get nervous, but like when I film stuff like this, I always want to flip the camera around. I'm like, oh, maybe it'd be less obvious, like my wonky face would be less obvious. So like there's definitely some physical stuff, and then the other stuff is like work stuff, like career stuff, imposter syndrome. No one will trust my ability if I go freelance in my marketing. Oh, anyway, bringing my vibe right down. So how am I going to do this? How am I going to do two things that my inner critic hates? I think the physical one is easier. So first of all, I'm already doing something that my inner critic hates, because I'm filming to camera and you can see my face. Here's my face. My tummy. Here you go. I'm going to show you my tummy. My inner critic is going to hate this. Clothes back on, babes. Clothes back on. I've got a hair in my face. I encourage you wholeheartedly to do this little task, but I fully advise going through this process of like sticking the finger to the inner critic and like actively finding those ways that are going to do things that push you beyond that comfort zone and prove to yourself that those little voices, those little niggles that are telling you that you're not good enough are just that. They're made up and they're not real, because it's so powerful. And I absolutely loved my chat with Leanne, and I plan to have many more because I just think she's brilliant. So do head over to either her Instagram page, Leanne Sia, or mine, Tassie_Mums Club, and you can find her through that as well. If you want to reach out to either of us and continue the conversation, or if you want to work with her. And I just think that it's been so good. So do like this video if it's been useful for me. I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to hear some feedback. I'd love to hear if you tried this little inner critic task. Subscribe, because I'm going to be doing one of these every single Friday, all being well. And I'll see you when I'll see you, babes. Have a gorgeous weekend.